On April 28th, a female car owner from Malaysia experienced a sudden and significant decrease in speed while making a low-speed turn in her Chery Omoda 5. The vehicle came to a stop in the middle of the road without any collision, accident, or pothole. Upon inspection, she discovered that the rear axle had broken, with the rusted breakage points showing only 2 welding points instead of being fully welded all around. The owner stated that the vehicle had only traveled 6,806 kilometers, yet the broken parts were clearly rusted. Chery's official statement the following day mentioned that the vehicle had been sent to the service center for thorough inspection and investigation, but the cause of the rear axle breakage had not yet been disclosed. The manufacturer also conducted a detailed analysis with the parts supplier, and it is estimated that around 600 Omoda 5 vehicles may be affected. The Omoda 5 is a mid-sized, pure electric SUV under the Chinese independent brand Chery Automobile. It is Chery's flagship model for the international market and also its highest-selling model overseas. The price of this vehicle in Malaysia ranges from 108,800 to 118,800 Malaysian ringgit, approximately 23,000 to 25,000 US dollars. The Omoda 5 has also been launched and sold in over 30 countries and regions worldwide, including Russia, South Africa, Chile, and Europe, with sales reportedly exceeding 100,000 units. However, this axle braking incident in Malaysia has exposed the quality of Chinese cars. While this model has been a hit abroad, it has not garnered much attention in China, being considered one of Chery's least popular SUVs. When the Omoda was launched in China in 2022 as a gasoline-powered vehicle, its price was only 92,900 to 126,900 yuan, 12,800 to 7,500 US dollars, and it reportedly sold less than 1,000 units per month after its launch. According to feedback from owners, the main problem with the gasoline version was that it was weak and used too much gas. In February 2023, the Omoda added hybrid and pure electric power versions, but they were mainly used for export. Chery Automobile was established in 1997 and is one of the earliest independent brands in China, focusing on the mid-low price segment and is considered a second-tier brand in China. In 2003, in imitation of the South Korean Daewoo Matis, Chery produced a microcar called the Chery QQ, which became hugely popular overnight. However, its subsequent sedan models had average performance. In China, when people talk about Chery, they often associate it with low-end, cheap, and due to quality issues, its reputation has not been very good. Chinese used to say, "Chery, Chery, queuing up for repairs." Recently, a netizen posted that they had just spent 124,000 yuan to buy a Chery Tiggo 8 Plus, but after half a month and only driving 1,200 kilometers, they wanted to change cars. Because driving a domestically made Chery car made them feel embarrassed in front of relatives and friends, they felt it was better to buy a Toyota or Honda for the same price. The Chery Tiggo 8 Plus is claimed to be equipped with the strongest engine, but its power output is very unstable, with noticeable jerks during acceleration. With a 1.6T engine, its fuel consumption reaches 1 yuan per kilometer, which is costly. There are also design problems. On slightly bumpy roads, there are squeaking noises from the B-pillar and C-pillar of the car doors, giving a cheap feel. The interior workmanship is also very rough. In addition, the chassis uses front and rear independent suspension, but the suspension is stiff, making it very bumpy on uneven roads. There are also sound insulation issues. Despite Chery's mediocre performance domestically, it was the first Chinese independent automobile brand to achieve exports. Since the first car was exported to Syria in 2001, Chery and its low prices quickly penetrated the markets of countries in the Middle East, Central Asia, South America, South Africa, and Eastern Europe. After the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war and the gradual withdrawal of Western brands from the Russian market, Chery has occupied the Russian market and has become the #1 imported car brand in Russia. Thanks to its first-mover advantage, Chery has been the champion of Chinese passenger car exports for 21 consecutive years. Its export volume is almost equal to its domestic sales, which is rare among Chinese auto companies. BYD, which we often mention, ranks 5th in export volume. Let's look at some data. In 2023, Chery Group's sales reached 1.8 million vehicles, a year-on-year increase of 52.6%, with exports totaling over 900,000 vehicles, a year-on-year increase of 101.1%, accounting for 49.8% of total sales. Chery has maintained strong growth momentum, with 250,000 exported vehicles in the first quarter of 2024, a year-on-year increase of 40.9%. In April, the group sold 182,000 vehicles, a year-on-year increase of 43.7%. Among them, exports reached nearly 790,000 vehicles, a year-on-year increase of 18.3%. New energy vehicle sales reached almost 33,000 vehicles, a year-on-year increase of 165.2%. Chery Automobile's early export markets were mostly developing countries, with a focus on gasoline-powered vehicles. After Chinese leader Xi Jinping proposed the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013, Chery seized this opportunity and increased its exports to countries along the route. To consolidate its overseas markets, Chery has established 10 overseas production bases, mainly located in regions where the new energy infrastructure is still underdeveloped, such as the Middle East, Central Asia, South America, Russia, and Mexico, where gasoline cars are still the absolute mainstream. In recent years, as the Chinese economy has slowed, domestic demand for new energy vehicles has decreased. To offset this, Chinese car companies are now focusing on Europe and America. This shift could benefit them by tapping into new markets, utilizing excess production capacity, and potentially enjoying higher profit margins. Chery has also introduced many electric versions of its models. Currently, Chery owns several global brands, including Chery, Exceed, Omoda, and Jetor, including internal combustion engines, pure electric, and plug-in hybrid powertrains. The names of these Chery brands were meant to be accessible to foreign markets and obfuscate their Chinese origins. With these electric models, Chery aims to expand further into the international market. In July last year, at the Chinese ASEAN New Industries Forum, Chery introduced its ASEAN strategies and plans to establish factories in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, achieving full model coverage in the ASEAN region. Chery Malaysia was officially launched in July 2023, with the Omoda Tego 5 Pro and Tego 8 Pro models starting assembly and production at its CKD plant in Kulim, Kedah, Malaysia, in the following month. By the end of August, the first batch of Omoda 5 and Tego 8 Pro had completed pre-delivery inspections and began delivery to customers. Taking advantage of European countries' preferential policies for new energy vehicles, Chery has become one of many Chinese automakers bringing low-cost electric vehicles to Europe. Earlier this year, Chery began selling cars in Spain and is set to start sales in Italy, the UK, and Poland by the end of 2024, followed by entry into other major European markets. In Spain, the starting price for the gasoline version of the Omoda 5 is €29,900, $32,400, which is 2.5 times its price in China. However, European countries have protested against China flooding the EV market. The EU is investigating whether Chinese EV manufacturers benefit from unfair government subsidies and may soon impose high tariffs on them. In order to get around this, Chery is considering establishing production in Europe. It is reported that Chery is negotiating with the Italian government to deepen cooperation and establish an automobile assembly plant, which will increase Italy's annual automobile production from 800,000 to 1.3 million vehicles. However, this could have an impact on Italy's domestic brands. Meanwhile, Chery has also reached an agreement with Spanish company Ebro EV to use the former Nissan plant in Barcelona for the cooperative production of new energy vehicles. In addition, Chery is actively expanding into the Southeast Asian market. Through its subsidiary Omoda and Jeku, it is cooperating with Vietnam's Galeximco Group to produce electric vehicles and enter the Vietnamese market. Chery prepared its South American market early on. In February 2023, Chery announced a $400 million investment in Argentina to build a plant expected to produce 100,000 vehicles per year. In fact, Chery has made several attempts to enter the U.S. market, which have all ended in failure. As early as 2004, Chery had collaborated with the U.S. company Visionary Vehicles. They signed an export agreement with plans to mass export Chery models to the United States starting in 2007, with an annual sales target of 250,000 vehicles. In March 2006, Visionary Vehicles received a $225 million investment plan to establish a joint venture with Chery. However, progress in channel expansion was slow, and U.S. dealers were not enthusiastic. At the end of 2006, the cooperation was confirmed to be terminated. In 2007, Visionary Vehicles sued Chery Automobile in a federal court in Detroit, alleging that the main reason for the cooperation was that Chery did not make expected progress in vehicle development and related preparations. Thus, Chery Automobile was suspected of fraud, leading to the failure of the joint venture project and causing heavy losses to Visionary Vehicles. Chery Automobile believed that the main reason for the failed cooperation was that Visionary Vehicles was only good at daydreaming and lacked financial support. However, Chery quickly found a new partner, Chrysler. At that time, Chrysler was looking for a Chinese car manufacturer to produce low-cost small cars for the North American and Western European markets, with Chinese car companies responsible for production for the Chrysler brand. With the popular QQ series in the Chinese market, Chery Automobile was the best partner in the small car segment, and with Chery's intention to enter the U.S. market, the two sides hit it off. In 2007, Chrysler and Chery signed an agreement in Beijing and planned to start exporting Chery models with Chrysler and Dodge brands to the U.S. in 2009. The following year, in 2008, the financial crisis hit. By the end of the year, the two sides officially announced the termination of the partnership, and Chery's second attempt to enter the U.S. market failed. A decade later, at the 2017 Frankfurt Motor Show, Chery Automobile, exhibiting for the first time, brought a brand new high-end product series called Exceed, and the first model, the Exceed TX. It stated that this car would be Chery's first step into the European and American markets. In early 2020, Chery found a new partner, the U.S. automotive distributor HAAH. HAAH signed a distribution agreement with Chery Automobiles for the North American market, planning to introduce Chery's Exceed and Tiggo brands to the North American market under the brand names Vantas and Tiggo in 2021 or early 2022. HAAH would sign contracts with numerous North American dealers to handle the entire process of sales, delivery, and after-sales service for the two brands. Exporting was just the first step, as HAAH also planned to cooperate with Chery to establish a factory in Michigan for the localized production of the Vantas brand. However, this cooperation faced many difficulties, and a few months later, HAAH announced that due to tariffs, U.S.-China relations, and other issues, it could not get support from investors and had to abandon its cooperation with Chery. HAAH also declared bankruptcy in July 2021. Despite repeated failures, Chery has not given up its plans to enter the U.S. market. Last year, Brian Wu, the executive vice president of Chery Mexico, stated in an interview that Chery had begun to formulate its business strategy to enter the U.S. market. In June 2022, Chery Automobile announced the establishment of its North American headquarters in Mexico. In April of last year, the Chery Automobile brand Jetour Automobile announced a partnership with the Chinese company LDR Solutions Group in Mexico, planning to invest $3 billion to build a car factory in Mexico with an annual production capacity of 400,000 vehicles, aiming to enter the U.S. and Canadian electric vehicle markets by the end of 2024. The United States is the world's second-largest automobile market, but China's automobile exports to the United States are subject to restrictions and tariffs as high as 25%. In fact, not only Chery, but many Chinese automakers have been hoping to open up the U.S. market over the past decade or so, including Zoytia, GAC, BYD, Great Wall, Geely, and NIO, but there have been few successful cases, and Geely Automobile is one of them. Geely Automobile is also one of China's earlier independent brands. In 2006, Geely Automobile became the first Chinese brand to participate in the North American Car Show, where it exhibited a small car called the CK and planned to introduce it to the U.S. market for sale in 2008, but this did not happen. Geely's sub-brand, Geometry, was the first domestically produced brand to sell electric vehicles in the United States. In 2020, Geometry's two models, the K23 and K27 microelectric vehicles, successfully entered the U.S. market. The local prices of these two vehicles were $22,499 and $12,999, respectively. It is worth mentioning that Geely once led the electric vehicle market from 2013 to 2015. However, due to a significant reduction in Chinese subsidies for new energy vehicles and cases of subsidy fraud, Geely lost its market position and was directed to make changes by the National Development and Reform Commission. By 2019, Geely Geometry electric vehicle sales were already at zero, according to the China Passenger Car Association. Faced with this challenging situation, Geometry boldly decided to enter the U.S. market. Although the actual number of cars sold is unknown, Geometry's stock price immediately rose, benefiting some Chinese stockholders. Geely's true success lies in its acquisitions or stakes of numerous international automotive companies, giving it the advantage to expand into overseas markets. Through previous acquisitions of Volvo, Malaysia's Proton, shares in Daimler AG, and Renault Samsung Motors, as well as joint ventures with Volvo to establish the luxury brand Lynk & Co., and with Daimler to establish a joint venture, Geely can target different markets based on its multi-brand matrix. On May 10, 2022, Geely Automobiles spent 264 billion Korean won, approximately $190 million to subscribe to 34% of the shares of Renault Group's Korean subsidiary, Renault Samsung Motors, becoming its second largest shareholder. It is reported that Geely will produce the Lynk & Co. sports utility vehicle at Renault's factory in Busan, a port city in southeastern South Korea. Insiders say that Geely's goal is to localize the production of Lynk & Co. plug-in hybrid vehicles in South Korea and export them to the U.S. market duty-free. Another strategy for Chinese car companies to open up the U.S. market is to use Mexico as a springboard. With its geographical proximity to the U.S. market and the trade advantages of the new version of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, Mexico has become a new capital concentration for the automotive manufacturing industry, especially for Chinese companies. Mexico has a complete automotive industry chain. According to data from the International Organization of Motor Vehicle Manufacturers, Mexico has ranked as the world's seventh largest manufacturer of automobiles for many years, and is also the fourth largest producer of automotive parts in the world. Additionally, Mexico ranks 10th in the world in lithium reserves, which is extremely advantageous for producing electric vehicles. Furthermore, Mexico has abundant labor resources. According to the Mexican National Institute of Statistics and Geography, in 2020, Mexico's population exceeded 126 million, with an average age of 29, making it the 11th most populous country in the world. Given the wave of new energy, the emerging Mexican market has become the focus of automotive companies. In March of last year, Tesla announced plans to build its fifth gigafactory in Mexico, with production scheduled for 2025. According to Marklines, the initial investment for the Tesla factory in Mexico is planned to be $5 billion, with an annual target production capacity of 2 million vehicles, making it Tesla's largest factory globally. After Tesla announced its factory construction plans in Mexico, many Chinese automotive parts suppliers also built or expanded their factories in Mexico, further improving Mexico's new energy vehicle industry chain. Chinese car companies have also followed suit. For example, BYD entered the Mexican passenger car market in March of last year and listed models such as the Dolphin and the Sea Lion locally. In the early stages, BYD's cars in Mexico were imported from China, but for future entry into the North American market, BYD is considering building a new factory in Mexico. SAIC Group also opened an international self-operated route from Ningde to Mexico in March 2023, with its largest car-carrying roll-on roll-off ship carrying its first batch of cars to Mexico. The SAIC Motors MG brand has expressed plans to consider building a new factory in Mexico and enter the U.S. market. At almost the same time, Great Wall Motors also established a subsidiary in Mexico and successively launched new energy models, initiating research on investment projects for local factories. In addition, GAC Motors is also considering building a factory in Mexico. Analysts say that although Mexico has many advantages, there are also certain policy and market risks. These include personal safety, operational models, inadequate infrastructure, labor protection during transition, difficult regulation, and xenophobia, which collectively pose short-term risks to foreign investors. Due to the uncertainty of the outlook, these plans of Chinese car companies to build factories in Mexico have not been implemented. However, the attempts of Chinese car companies to enter Mexico in a big way have raised concerns in the United States. Washington expressed concern about the impending wave of Chinese investment in Mexico. Reports indicate that the Biden administration is concerned that Chinese car companies will be able to circumvent measures aimed at reducing reliance on Chinese suppliers by setting up factories in Mexico, and senior members of the Republican-led House recently wrote in a letter that they are concerned that Chinese companies will use Mexico as a backdoor to enter their market. Insiders say that the United States has raised issues related to Chinese investment in its meetings with Mexican officials, and Mexican officials have acknowledged that they must be cautious when considering Chinese investment because of the risk of offending the United States. Former U.S. President and Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump claimed at a rally in mid-March that the Chinese are building several large monster car factories in Mexico. If he returns to the White House, he will impose a 100% tariff on cars produced by Chinese companies in Mexico.